It was a crisp autumn afternoon, the golden light of the setting sun casting long shadows over the busy street. Cars zoomed by, their engines roaring and tires screeching as they rushed to reach their destinations. The bustling city felt like a blur, its noise overwhelming and relentless. On the sidewalk, people hurried along, some with their heads buried in their phones, others chatting with friends. But in the midst of the frenzy, a small, frightened puppy found itself stranded in the middle of the road. The puppy's fur was a soft, dusty brown, its eyes wide with fear as it looked around, unsure of which way to go. The cars came faster, honking horns, their drivers oblivious to the tiny creature in their path. It seemed like only moments before the puppy would be caught in the chaos, its life in jeopardy. But then, out of the crowd, a young girl appeared. She was just 10 years old, with long brown hair tied in a messy ponytail and bright, compassionate eyes. Her name was Mia. She had been walking home from school, the afternoon sun warming her cheeks, when she noticed the puppy in the road. Without hesitation, Mia's heart raced and she rushed toward the street, her small hands reaching out as if she could already feel the puppy's trembling body. The cars were speeding toward her, but Mia didn't care. She didn't think twice. Her only focus was the puppy. With a burst of courage, she darted out into the busy street, her arms outstretched, ready to rescue the small creature from certain danger. The world seemed to slow down for a brief moment, as she could see the car coming toward her. The driver's face was pale, his foot on the gas, not noticing Mia's frantic movements. But Mia didn't stop. She reached the puppy just in time, scooping it into her arms and holding it tightly against her chest. The car swerved at the last moment, narrowly avoiding a collision, and Mia breathed a sigh of relief. She was shaken but had done what she came to do. She held the puppy close, its tiny heart racing in her arms. The puppy, now safe, licked her face with its small, wet tongue as if to say thank you. Mia stood on the edge of the road, heart pounding in her chest, as the world around her returned to its normal pace. Cars continued to zoom past, people continued walking, but to Mia, it felt like time had frozen for just a moment. She had saved a life. With the puppy still nestled in her arms, Mia made her way back to the sidewalk. She didn't know what to do next, but she knew she couldn't just leave the tiny creature alone. The puppy, now calm, looked up at her with eyes full of gratitude. Mia smiled softly, a warmth spreading through her as she realized that she couldn't just walk away. The bond between them had already formed in that brief moment. She glanced around, unsure of where the puppy had come from, but no one seemed to be looking for it. There were no signs of an owner. Mia looked at the puppy once more, its tiny body shaking in her arms. She knew what she had to do. Mia's family lived in a small apartment complex just a few blocks away. She often spent her afternoons with her mother, who worked from home, and her father, who was always there to greet her with a smile when she returned from school. Mia loved animals, always having a soft spot for them, and she had always dreamed of having a dog. But with their small living space and her parents' busy schedules, she knew it wasn't practical. But this was different. Mia made the decision in that instant. She would take the puppy home. She would care for it. She didn't know how her parents would react, but she couldn't let it go. The puppy was safe in her arms and it was hers to protect now. She could feel the warmth of its body against hers, and she couldn't imagine leaving it alone on the streets. The walk back to her apartment felt longer than usual. Mia's heart raced with excitement and nervousness as she cradled the puppy. She kept glancing down at it, marveling at how small and fragile it seemed. She imagined what her parents might say when she walked through the door with a puppy in her arms. Would they be mad? Would they be surprised? She didn't know, but she hoped they would understand. As she reached the front door of their apartment building, Mia paused for a moment, taking a deep breath. She had been preparing herself for the conversation she would have with her parents. She would explain how she had saved the puppy from the road and how it needed a home. She hoped they would see the same compassion she felt in her heart. Inside, the apartment was quiet, the faint smell of dinner wafting from the kitchen. Her mother, Caroline, was sitting at the dining table typing on her laptop, while her father, Daniel, was on the couch, flipping through a magazine. They looked up in surprise when Mia walked in, the tiny puppy still cradled in her arms. "Mia, what's that?" her mother asked, her voice a mixture of concern and curiosity. I found him," Mia replied, her voice trembling slightly. "He was in the street. I couldn't just leave him there. He needs help." Her father raised an eyebrow, setting the magazine aside. "Mia, we've talked about this. We can't just take in every animal we find. We don't have the space and we can't afford the responsibility right now." Mia's heart sank. She had known this might happen, but she had hoped they would understand. "Please, Dad," she said, her voice soft but pleading. "He's so small and he was so scared. I couldn't just leave him there. He doesn't have anyone else." Her mother looked at the puppy, then at her husband. There was a long silence as they exchanged a glance. Caroline sighed, rubbing her forehead. "Mia, we've talked about this," she repeated. "We don't have the time or space for another pet." But then Mia saw it, the softening in her mother's eyes. Her parents had always taught her to be kind, to help others when they were in need, and this little puppy, though a challenge, was now part of their family's story. Caroline finally smiled, reaching out to pet the puppy's soft head. "I guess we'll have to figure something out, won't we?" Mia's face lit up, her heart soaring with joy. She had won them over. The puppy was staying. Over the next few days, Mia's family worked together to care for their new puppy. They named him Max, after the strong, determined little dog who had captured their hearts. Mia spent hours playing with him, teaching him tricks and giving him all the love she could. Max quickly became part of their daily routine, always by Mia's side, wagging his tail and bringing joy to the household. As Max grew, so did the bond between him and Mia. She would take him on walks after school, running around the park, throwing a ball, and laughing as he chased after it with boundless energy. Max was more than just a pet. He was a friend, a companion, and a reminder of the kindness Mia had shown when she saw an animal in need. In time, Max became a symbol of the power of compassion. Mia's act of courage that day had not only saved a life but had also changed the course of her own. It taught her the importance of acting on what is right, no matter the obstacles. The once busy street where Mia had rescued Max was now a distant memory. But every time Mia looked at Max, she was reminded of that one pivotal moment, that decision to act in the face of danger, and how it had changed both of their lives forever. Mia had learned something she would carry with her forever. Sometimes the smallest actions can make the biggest difference in the world. Scene 1. Chaos and Rescue. The afternoon sun beat down on the cracked asphalt of Elm Street, a ribbon of gray cutting through the heart of the bustling town. Cars roared past, a metallic river of hurried lives, oblivious to the small drama unfolding at its edge. 10-year-old Lily, her pigtails bouncing with each hurried step, was returning from the library, a stack of well-loved books clutched to her chest. Her eyes, usually bright and filled with the wonder of stories, were narrowed in concentration, focused on avoiding the cracks in the sidewalk, a childhood ritual. Suddenly, a high-pitched yelp pierced the din of traffic. Lily's head snapped up. A tiny, trembling ball of fur was darting across the busy street, its frantic paws slipping on the hot asphalt. It was a puppy barely more than a few weeks old, its eyes wide with terror, its whimper lost in the cacophony of engines. A large truck, its horn blaring, was bearing down on the terrified creature. Without a second thought, Lily dropped her books, the stories scattering across the pavement like fallen leaves. She surged forward, her heart pounding in her ears. The world seemed to slow down, the roaring traffic fading into a distant hum. She lunged, scooping the puppy into her arms just as the truck thundered past, its rush of wind ruffling her hair. The puppy, its tiny body shaking, burrowed into her chest, its wet nose nuzzling against her skin. Lily held it close, her own breath catching in her throat. She looked down at the trembling creature, its big brown eyes filled with gratitude and fear. The world around them seemed to fade away, replaced by a silent understanding. Scene 2. A safe haven. Lily carried the puppy home, her steps slow and deliberate, as if afraid to break the fragile peace that had settled between them. She cradled the puppy like a precious treasure, her fingers gently stroking its soft fur. Her heart ached for the little creature, abandoned and vulnerable. Her small house, nestled at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, was a haven of warmth and familiar scents. The aroma of her mother's baking filled the air, a comforting reminder of home. As she entered, her mother, Sarah, looked up from the kitchen counter, her eyes widening in surprise. "Lily, what on earth?" she began, her voice trailing off as she saw the tiny bundle in her daughter's arms. Lily carefully placed the puppy on the worn rug in the living room. It was a scrawny thing, its ribs visible beneath its thin fur, its tail tucked between its legs. Sarah knelt beside it, her gentle hands examining the trembling creature. "Oh, the poor thing," she murmured, her voice filled with compassion. "Where did you find him?" Lily recounted the harrowing rescue, her voice still trembling with emotion. Sarah listened, her eyes filled with pride and concern. She knew her daughter had a heart of gold, a deep empathy for all living things. They cleaned the puppy, bathing it in warm water and gently drying its fur with a soft towel. They found a small, old blanket and made a cozy nest for it in a cardboard box. The puppy, exhausted and grateful, curled up in the blanket and fell asleep, its tiny chest rising and falling rhythmically. Scene 3. A Name and a Bond. The next morning the puppy was bright-eyed and energetic, its tail wagging tentatively. It followed Lily everywhere, its tiny paws clicking on the wooden floor. Lily, in turn, showered it with affection, feeding it small amounts of warm milk and playing with it using a knotted piece of rope. They spent hours together, a silent understanding growing between them. Lily named the puppy Whisper, because its barks were soft and gentle, like the rustling of leaves in a breeze. As the days turned into weeks, Whisper grew stronger and more playful. He was a constant companion, a furry shadow that followed Lily wherever she went. They explored the neighborhood together, Whisper sniffing at every tree and bush, Lily pointing out the wonders of the natural world. They played in the park, Whisper chasing after a bright red ball, Lily laughing as he tumbled and rolled in the grass. A deep bond formed between them, a connection that transcended words. Whisper seemed to understand Lily's every mood, her joys and sorrows. He would nuzzle her hand when she was sad, bark excitedly when she was happy. He was her confidant, her furry friend, her silent partner in adventure. Scene 4. The Search for a Home. Despite the joy Whisper brought into her life, Lily knew she couldn't keep him forever. Their small house was already crowded, and her mother worked long hours to make ends meet. She knew they couldn't afford the cost of caring for a dog. With a heavy heart, Lily decided to find Whisper a new home. She made flyers with a picture of Whisper, his big brown eyes staring out at the world, and posted them around the neighborhood. She asked her friends and neighbors if they knew anyone who wanted a puppy. Days turned into weeks, but no one came forward. Lily's heart sank with each passing day. She couldn't bear the thought of giving Whisper away, but she knew it was the right thing to do. One afternoon, as she sat on the porch steps, Whisper curled up at her feet, a woman approached, her eyes drawn to the flyer pinned to the lamppost. She was Mrs. Henderson, an elderly widow who lived down the street. She had always admired Lily's kindness and gentle spirit. "Is this the puppy you rescued?" she asked, her voice soft and kind. Lily nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "He's very sweet," Mrs. Henderson said, her gaze lingering on Whisper. "I've been looking for a companion, someone to keep me company." Lily's heart leaped. Could this be the answer? She told Mrs. Henderson about Whisper's playful nature and gentle temperament. Mrs. Henderson listened attentively, her eyes filled with warmth. "I think he'd be perfect," she said, smiling. "Would you mind if I took him home for a trial run?" Scene 5. A New Chapter. Lily agreed, her heart a mixture of hope and sadness. She packed Whisper's belongings, his blanket, his toys, his food, into a small bag. She gave him one last hug, her tears falling onto his soft fur. Mrs. Henderson took Whisper home, and Lily waited anxiously for news. The next day Mrs. Henderson called, her voice filled with joy. "Whisper is settling in beautifully," she said. "He's a wonderful companion and I'd love to keep him." Lily was overjoyed, but her happiness was tinged with sadness. She missed Whisper terribly, his playful antics, his warm presence. But she knew he was in a good home with someone who loved him. Mrs. Henderson invited Lily to visit Whisper whenever she wanted. Lily took her up on the offer, visiting Whisper every week. She played with him in Mrs. Henderson's garden, took him for walks in the park, and told him stories about their adventures together. Whisper never forgot Lily. He would greet her with enthusiastic barks and licks, his tail wagging furiously. Their bond remained strong, a testament to their shared history. Scene 6. The Ripple Effect. Lily's act of kindness had a ripple effect, spreading warmth and compassion throughout the community. Mrs. Henderson, once lonely and isolated, found new purpose and joy in caring for Whisper. The neighborhood, inspired by Lily's selfless act, became more aware of the needs of animals and vulnerable people. Lily continued to be a beacon of kindness, volunteering at the local animal shelter, helping elderly neighbors with their chores, and always offering a helping hand to those in need. She learned that even the smallest act of compassion could make a big difference, that a single act of kindness could change lives forever. The story of the little girl who saved a puppy from a busy road became a local legend, a reminder that even in the midst of a bustling world, there is always room for compassion, for kindness, for love. And that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with a simple act of bravery, a heart filled with empathy, and the whisper of a gentle wind.